Michelle, do you mind just doing a quick roll call before I call the meeting to order, please?
Sorry, trying to do too many things. Councillor Quinnell.
I am here.
Councillor Sweeney.
Here.
Councillor Davis.
Present.
Councillor Hennon.
Here.
Councillor Fury.
Present.
Councillor Norton.
Here.
And Mayor Mulfeld.
Present. Thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and call this December 7th, 2020 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. This is being held remotely via WebEx. Thank you for those that called in to participate in your government, and please have a bit of patience this evening as we work through what can be some glitches when we are hosting our meetings remotely. But appreciate you attending this evening. Our first item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to pick a counselor tonight to lead us, and I will, Frank, do you mind?
How can I refuse? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks very much, Frank. Our first item on the agenda is a proclamation acknowledging Arbor Day, which is Friday, April 30th, 2021, and I will read that proclamation now. Whereas natural areas, trees, and landscapes provide not only community beautification, but also economic and environmental benefits. And whereas trees provide many benefits to the community, including air purification, windbreaks, noise reductions, shade, and energy savings. And whereas planting trees and maintaining older trees provides an opportunity for community interaction, volunteerism, economic development, and environmental conservation. And whereas our efforts to improve the environment benefit present and future generations. And whereas Arbor Day in Montana is officially the last Friday in April, as it is every year, be it therefore resolved, I, John Mulfeld, Mayor of Whitefish, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day, and I encourage citizens to participate in appropriate activities and to take advantage of the benefits of the parks and other natural areas in our community. Thank you very much for listening. With that said, we will be taking public comment this evening. We do, however, have, we have 6 public hearings scheduled under item 7 of our agenda. So if you are here to comment on a public hearing, please wait until I call that specific public hearing later in the meeting. Otherwise, if you have anything to share with the council, please, when Michelle acknowledges you, your name and address, for the record. And I'll turn it back to Michelle Hauk to manage our public comment tonight.
Thank you. So if you would like to speak during this time, please raise your hand by hovering your mouse over your name in the participants list and click the hand icon. If you're on the phone, please hit *3 on your phone pad, and that will also raise your hand. Please, after you're done, please do the same, repeat that same process to lower your hand. And right now, Lindsay Ramadka, you can unmute and you'll have the floor.
Okay, hello. So I have no idea if you can see me because I can't see myself, but my name is Lindsay Ramadka. I am an attorney with Weinberg and Ramadka in Whitefish at 116 Lupfer Avenue, Unit B, and I am commenting on the last thing that I believe you all will discuss tonight, which is the contract with the Whitefish Fire Services area. I represent several constituents of the Whitefish Fire Service area, and they are in favor of continuing to contract for fire services with the city. So I would encourage you all to please approve the contract that Dana Smith and Joe Page have worked really hard with our WFSA board to negotiate. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Jenny, I'm going to say this wrong, Jenny, and I apologize. Claudia, you can unmute.
That was great, Michelle. So I'm just here tonight. I wrote a letter to you all, and I didn't make it in by Tuesday, but I am trying to get the ball rolling on a snow bus stop on Spokane Avenue in the 300 block of Spokane, and I just want to welcome any kind of questions or any kind of follow-up that might be necessary. Craig the workman has that letter, and just looking ahead to the future in Whitefish and getting a bump out spot that kind of serves the southern end of the downtown corridor, and helping out with the safety of buses on Spokane Avenue, and hopefully more bus ridership means a little less congestion. There's some parking spots in that area that I think are going to be on the docket for you all to look at. So just kind of the very beginning of what I think will probably be a bit of a discussion about a bus stop on Spokane Ave. And so I'd love to talk to anybody that has any questions about it at any point in time. I just wanted to stop by tonight to sort of introduce that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. Appreciate the update. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about that, but that's news to me. That's great news to me. Thanks for your efforts.
Thanks a lot, and thank you all for continuing to do all that you're doing during these challenging times. I really appreciate all of your work.
Thanks, Jenny.
Hey,
Michelle.
there are a few people who have joined since then, so if you'd like to speak during communications from the public for items that are not on the agenda under public hearings, please hover your mouse over your name on the participant list and click the hand icon, or on your phone, dial *3 and your hand will raise. We'll give it just a little bit. John, I don't see anybody else.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. We will move on to item 5 of our agenda. We do have Annie Moran here this evening, I believe. We have a letter included in the packet from the Whitefish Community Library requesting that we appoint new trustees and a trustee in training position to the Whitefish Community Library. And with that said, I believe Annie probably called in, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Michelle?
Actually, she's on video. So
Okay.
Annie, you can go ahead and unmute and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Mofield and councilors. We appreciate this opportunity to recommend 3 outstanding candidates for our vacancies. You have the detail and their letters and my letter in your packet, but in summary, we'd like to get you your support to appoint Richard Hildner to fulfill former WCL trustee Cheryl Hyland's term, which expires in 2022. Appoint Deb Bond to fulfill former trustee Chris Learbow's term, which expires in 2023. And appoint Jessica Tubbs as the current Whitefish Community Library trustee in training, and confirm her full trustee effective upon the next trustee vacancy, which is how we've been doing this since we implemented the trustee in training position. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank both Cheryl Hyland and Chris Learbow for their outstanding service to the library. Neither one of them wanted to step down, but both are contending with serious health issues and need to. This was non-COVID related, but they have their own issues to cope with there. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our candidates for stepping up. The library has proven to be a really critical and important service during the pandemic period, and our staff and our trustees have been doing a great job making sure that we can supply materials to people who are homebound or need them during this period of time. And I just would like to thank them to all of you and let you know that that's been a very involved process, and Joey and her crew have done a great job. And with that, I'll leave it at any questions you might have.
Thanks, Annie. Any questions for Annie on her letter or her request tonight? I do believe these are my appointments and will need to be ratified with a majority vote of the city council. Any questions or comments from the council? Not seeing any, I'm going to go ahead and appoint Richard Hildner to fulfill former WCL trustee Cheryl Hyland's term expiring in 2022. I will motion to appoint Deb Bond to fulfill former trustee Chris Learbo's term expiring 2023. And finally, appoint Jessica Tubbs as the current WCL trustee in training and confirm her transition to full trustee effective upon the next trustee vacancy. And to confirm those appointments, I just need a simple showing of hands from the council ratifying those appointments.
Okay.
And I, Rebecca?
Aye.
And that motion carries unanimously. Michelle, thanks very much, Ann, for joining us this evening.
Thank you all, and appreciate all you're doing for all of us right now. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We will move on to the consent agenda. You have the minutes from the November 16th special as well as regular sessions included in the packet. Any additions or corrections to the minutes, or can I have a motion for approval? We'll start with any corrections.
Mayor, I do have some corrections.
Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay, sorry. I just have to find my cheat sheet because I sent them over to Michelle. All right, so on page 52, fourth paragraph down, last word, the apostrophe goes between the R and the S. Page 53, fourth line down, wildlife, wasn't sure if it was prone or protection area. Page 54, sixth paragraph, under manager, eliminate and put an A. Fourth line down, eliminate quote to implement. And under staff, let's see, third line down, manager Smith, I think should be identified, not she, because I think it needs to be more descriptive. Next paragraph, manager Smith, and then eliminate ask and put bid in its place. And then page 55, fourth line down, site is add an A, high cost, high cost, and then December or early January. Okay, fifth paragraph, manager Smith stated, and then add that, eliminate the before faith, and then to work, add with. Page 55, Counselor Sweeney, fourth line. I think it reads more clearly if it says, if we added with increases in COVID infections. But Michelle, I'm not sure I actually gave you that one, but okay. Page 50.
Rebecca, just to a point on that, it may read better, but if it wasn't read into the record as that, then it can't be a correction to the minutes.
Okay, so we'll eliminate that.
For the record.
I might have just added that in for clarification. Okay, we'll eliminate that one. Page 56, okay. First paragraph, seventh line, it should be all caps, OSHA, OSHA. Ninth line, we should add ARA, chartered city. 11th line, after city, eliminate the period. And then page 56, last paragraph, it should I added could be on. So it's a little scrambly, sorry. Okay, that's all I've got. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the corrections as
Thanks,
stated.
Rebecca. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Quinnell. Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Quinnell,
Aye.
Counselor Sweeney,
Aye.
Counselor Davis,
In favor?
Counselor Hennon,
Aye.
Counselor Fury,
In favor.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And we'll move on to item 7 of our agenda. As I mentioned earlier, we do have 6 public hearings. So if you're here or present to comment on either of the public hearings, please wait until I call those individual hearings. With that said, we will start with item 7A, which is consideration of a request from Keenan Gallagher for a conditional use permit located at 614 Summers Avenue to construct an accessory apartment. The property is zoned WR2, which is our 2-family residential district, and this will be WCUP 20-15.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, this item does involve a project that our company is working on, so I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing.
Great, thanks very much, Ben. Let the record reflect that Ben has recused himself from this agenda item, and we'll turn it over to Hillary.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I was going to try and share my screen if I can do that, Michelle. Is that all right? There, just so we can look at a picture instead of me. Are you seeing that?
No.
No. There we go.
There you go.
All right. So this is a picture of 614 Summers Avenue. This is a CUP for an accessory apartment in the WR2 zone, and you can see the existing garage in the backyard there on the left of the picture. That garage would be replaced with a new garage, and the apartment would be built over that new garage. The surrounding land uses and the zoning is WR2, and it's all residential uses. There are a number of other apartment garages in the neighborhood. You can see one just to the right in the picture there as an existing garage apartment as well. The growth policy designates this area as urban, which is consistent with the WR2 zoning. And the project was noticed, and notice of the hearing was published in the paper. We received 1 comment in support of the project. Overall, the proposed use does comply with the zoning district and conforms to the development standards for accessory apartments in the zoning code. The garage is meant to be no more than 600 square feet, which means that they'll be able to use the accessory structure setbacks of 6 feet on the sides and 6 feet to the alley. 3 off-street parking spaces are required. You can see that there is already a paved driveway coming off of Summers to the front of the house. And then there will be parking spaces in the garage as well. Property is suitable for the proposed accessory apartment, and it complies with the minimum lot size, the lot coverage, and the required setbacks. And as I mentioned, is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood because of similar uses and other apartments in the neighborhood as well. So at the November Planning Board meeting, staff recommended approval of the conditional use permit application subject to 7 conditions of approval. The applicant spoke at the hearing, but no other members of the public spoke. The Planning Board unanimously approved the request, and they did ask for confirmation that any excavation in the alley to connect utilities to the apartment is required to be repaired and replaced. I did confirm that with Public Works that an excavation, a right-of-way permit is required, along with proof of liability insurance and an annual bond, and repair of the alley to its pre-construction condition is required. Public Works staff inspects the work to ensure this occurs. And I understand that there is a section of this alley that has not been repaved following the construction of an apartment on the same alley. And that's something that Public Works is dealing with right now to make sure that it is paved. So that's what I could tell you about that. And I'm sure Craig could answer more questions about the process there. So the planning board adopted the staff report with findings of fact and 7 conditions, recommended conditions of approval. The ones of interest are probably 3 off-street parking spaces need to be designated, 1 for the apartment and 2 for the house. The applicant must pave the section of new driveway that will connect the alley to the garage, the new garage. And prior to obtaining a building permit, the property must be deed restricted such that the accessory apartment is only rented if the owner lives in the main house. And again, short-term rentals are not permitted in this neighborhood. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Hillary. Any questions for Hillary from the council? We'll start with Frank. Any questions?
No questions here.
Okay, Andy?
No questions.
Okay, Rebecca?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan?
No questions for Hillary, maybe the applicant, but nothing right now.
Thank you, Ryan. Steve?
Yeah, I do have a question, Hillary. It's kind of slipped by me in the planning board meeting, but in the past, when we've approved these accessory apartments, my understanding was that the homeowner had to live in either the house or the apartment. But this reads differently. Is that a change in the way that we're doing these?
No, it's not a change, but we're not putting a deed restriction on what happens with the house. We're only putting a deed restriction on the apartment. So if a homeowner decided to live in the apartment and rent out their house, they can do that.
Okay.
But what we're saying is that they can't rent out the apartment without living in the house.
Gotcha.
So, you know, they wouldn't be able to live out of town and rent out both.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And finally, Ben, any questions for Hillary?
I am recused from this.
I'm sorry, that's right. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be 7A of our agenda. And Michelle, I will turn it back to you to manage public comment, if any, tonight.
Okay, thank you. If anybody would like to speak towards this agenda item, please hover your mouse over your name in the participants page or participants list and click that hand icon. If you're calling in, *3 will do the same. And Hillary, is the applicant here, and does the applicant want to speak to you now?
The applicant is here, Jackson Davis, and I don't know if he would like to speak, but
okay. It looks like he does. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to pop in and say thank you, Hillary. I think she actually covered pretty much everything very well. And if anyone has any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them. But I think she's done a good job with the report. Thank you.
John, I don't see anybody who would like to speak to this.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 7A of the agenda and turn it back to the council for hopefully a motion. And I'll go with Ryan.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the request from Keenan Gallagher for a conditional use permit located at 614 Summers Avenue to construct an accessory apartment, zone WR2, two-family residential district. That's WCUP 20-15.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion?
Nothing for me.
Michelle. Thanks, Ryan. Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Cornell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
Aye.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
Aye.
Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. And that's unanimous. And again, just for the record, please reflect that Ben Davis did recuse himself from the vote this evening. We'll move on to item 7B, which is a consideration of a request from Jackie Culver for a conditional use permit located at 619 Columbia Avenue, right down the road, to construct an accessory apartment on a property zone WR2, which is again our two-family residential district, and this will be WCUP 20-16 this evening.
All right, Michelle, can I share my screen? It's not coming up as an option quite yet.
Welcome aboard, Tara.
Hi, everyone. For those of you guys I haven't met, I'm Tara Ossendorf. I'm the new Bailey for all of you that knew her. So in the planning department under Dave. Looks like I got my share screen button up here now. Okay, so just wanted to pull the site plan up for you. Again, this project is right down the road from Hillary's, so it's super, super similar. So I'm going to try and keep it brief, knowing how many public hearings we have tonight. The project's located at 619 Columbia Avenue. Jackie Culver is requesting a CUP for a new accessory apartment near the rear of her lot behind an existing family or single family home. The new structure, which conforms to all of our development standards for accessory apartments, will be a 2-car garage with an apartment above intended for use by her sister. The structure has an overall footprint that's less than 600 square feet, which will be confirmed at the time of the building permit. That allows for a minimum of 6-foot setbacks on those side and rear property lines. The lot provides adequate space to accommodate all 3 required parking spaces on site, with the identified spaces located on the existing paved driveway in the front, and then inside the proposed garage, which will be accessed from the alley. The lot's designated WR2, two-family residential, and the growth policy definition for this area is urban, which is compatible with the current use. All surrounding land uses are also WR2, and there's quite a few other similar garage apartment units in the surrounding neighborhood. Again, the project that Hillary just talked about. The project was noticed in the pilot, and a mailing was sent to all the adjacent landowners. We did receive 2 comments, and they were both actually in support of the project, and those can be found in your packets. Finally, the property will be deed restricted, which again, just like Hillary just mentioned, which will ensure that the unit can't be rented unless the owner is actually on the property. Planning board did unanimously approve the request subject to the conditions in your packet. And again, I think this is pretty straightforward. So with that, I'll take any questions. And Jackie is on the line as well.
Thank you, Tara. Any questions for Tara on her staff report? Not seeing any. Thanks very much, Tara. We will go to our public hearing this evening on item 7B of our agenda. I do believe the applicant is here. If she's wishing to provide any additional comment, I'll turn it over to Michelle to manage the public hearing.
Hey, Jackie, if you'd like to speak, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Sure, thanks. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for the time and the consideration. I think that the report really covered everything about this permit request, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Michelle, public comment this evening.
Okay, again, if you like. So far, we don't have anything, but I'll just remind those that maybe have just popped on. Please hover your mouse over your name on the participants list to the right side of your page, and you will find a hand icon. Please click on that and that'll raise your hand. If you're attending by phone, please hit *3 on your phone pad, which will also raise your hand. If you can't find the participants list, go ahead and click the participants at the lower right-hand corner. It's in blue next to chat, and your participants list will pop up. I don't see any, John. We're good.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 7B and turn it back to the council for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I will make a motion to approve WCUP 20-16, the finding of fact and the staff report and the 7 conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Planning Board on November 19th, 2020.
Thanks, Frank. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Fury. Further discussion? Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Quinnell?
Aye.
Counselor Sweeney?
Aye.
Counselor Davis?
In favor?
Counselor Hennon?
Aye.
Counselor Fury?
In favor.
Counselor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does carry unanimously, which brings us quickly on to item 7C of our agenda. We have ordinance 20-17, an ordinance amending Title 11 zoning regulations, Chapter 2, zoning district. This is WDTA 20-05, and it will be on a first reading tonight. Wendy.
All right, good evening. So this zoning text amendment is coming to you from the Strategic Housing Committee as part of their annual review. They're recommending to the council to reduce the threshold for the administrative CUP in the WR4, our high density multifamily residential district, but leave all other standards the same. The committee is concerned that projects are building right at the threshold of 7 units in order to avoid the legacy home program, while they still have an impact on the affordable housing problem in town and ought to be part of the program. You folks will recall the Strategic Housing Steering Committee met with you in a work session on October 19th, and it was part of the annual review that they provided for you. They looked at the administrative procedures, which will be the next public hearing, and then also offered this zoning text amendment. You voiced some concerns with the proposed text amendment, however, suggested that it would come forward through the public hearing process to discuss it further and get public input. The council will recall that the strategic housing plan originally called for new subdivisions to be subject to the mandatory affordable housing program, but as part of developing the inclusionary zoning program, the steering committee recommended broadening the program to incorporate multifamily. And in order to obtain inclusionary housing, a discretionary permit such as a conditional use permit or a PUD would be necessary to get the inclusionary housing. So the solution, which was ultimately approved by you folks, was to reduce the threshold for a CUP in both the WR3 and the WR4 zones, maintaining some uses by right, and then allowing some smaller projects to be reviewed through an administrative CUP. Before we had the legacy home program, in the WR4, folks could build an unlimited number of units without any sort of development review permit. They still had to meet all the standards, but it was all by right and, you know, subject to review at the time of building permit. Currently, 7 or few units are permitted by right in the WR4. An administrative CUP is required for projects between 8 and 18, and then a full CUP is required for more than 18 units. We did place a draft on the city's webpage, notice advisory agencies, place a legal in the pilot. We received comments, a letter from the Strategic Housing Plan Committee offering support for 5 units or more for an ACUP. And then we also received 6 comments right before the planning board meeting in support of the text amendment. And then also you folks just received some letters today. So while there could be some positives to reducing the requirement for an administrative CUP from 8 units to 4, it could capture more projects. It could be low enough that all projects will simply build the best project for the property because the legacy home program requirements will be required regardless. And so they'll just make the best project for the property. More neighbors would have an opportunity to weigh in. And if someone were to build a project by right, it would be very small with less impact. Staff is concerned with the possible text amendment. Again, before the legacy home program, the WR4 had a limited number of units permitted by right. Maintaining a certain number of units by right was a bit of a concession during the development of the legacy home program because of the new requirement for a CUP. And then we provided the ACUP was another option for the smaller type of projects.
We have seen folks intentionally avoid the legacy home program, and we're concerned that by dropping the standard even more, potentially people might build even less dense projects in our highest density zoning. We're a bit concerned that some of these changes may have made a bit of a de facto down zone of our town, which could result in sprawl instead of the compact, walkable, bikeable community that we all desire. And then finally, the legacy home program is barely a year old. We've had very few projects, and we're kind of wondering if maybe it's a little bit too soon to be making any sort of changes. The planning board did hold a public hearing back in November. And we did receive some more letters of support again, and then 3 folks spoke at the public hearing in support of the proposed amendment. Staff did recommend denial of the proposed text amendment, but offered an alternative recommendation to require an ACUP at 5 units instead of 4. After the public hearing, that is the recommendation that the planning board ultimately voted to pass on a 5-to-1 vote. So they are recommending dropping the threshold from 8 units down to 5 units. So a 4-plex, 3, 2, or 1 would just be a permitted use. So staff has offered a text amendment exhibit for you, and then also some revised findings of fact, because again, our staff report did recommend denial for that. And we answer any questions for you.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Not seeing any at this time, Wendy. Thanks very much. And we will hold a public hearing on what will be ordinance 20-17, amending Title 11 zoning regulations, Chapter 2 zoning district. And this will be on our first reading. And I will turn it back to Michelle to manage our public comment this evening.
Okay, for those of you who would like to speak towards this, please raise your hand. Again, that's hovering over your name to the right side on your participants list to click the hand icon or *3 on the phone. While we're waiting for that, John, we did receive 5 written comments from the public. Would you like me to read those names off for you?
Yes, please, and just whether their comments were in support or against or neutral, please.
Okay. DL Blank, she is in support going from 8 to 4 units. Patty Kodiga is in support of going from 8 to 5 without a conditional use permit. Samuel Neff is also in support to go from 8 to 5 without a conditional use permit. Mary Person is also in support of 8 to 5 without a conditional use permit. And Susan Perlman is the same.
Thank you, Michelle.
Last call for anybody who would like to speak towards this. I know one other person just popped on, so if that person would like to speak, please raise your hand. We'll give it just 1 minute to give that person time.
Yep.
So we are on agenda item 7C. I just want to make sure that everybody who is just coming on understands which agenda item we are, 7C, the ordinance number 2017 for Title 11 zoning regulations, Chapter 2 zoning district. We are at public comment.
Michelle, I think Leo Keene might be having difficulty with his audio.
Okay.
I don't know, Leo, if you can hear me, but if you wanted to provide public comment, if you're still having trouble.
Leo, if you'd like to, you can unmute. So if you're able to do that, or send a chat to me in the chat box, and I could read your comment. Rhonda, you just popped on, and I don't know if are you interested in talking or speaking towards this agenda item 7C, the WR4?
Yes, Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having trouble finding my little hand to raise it. I apologize.
That's okay. So go ahead. Well, we'll have you have the floor, and then hopefully we can help Leo out. Leo is unmuted, so go ahead and stay unmuted, Leo, just as long as you don't have background noise, and we'll let Rhonda speak, and then we'll go to Leo.
I just wanted to say that I support this. I think that it is a good improvement from two completely different directions because it gives more opportunity for neighbors to weigh in on projects that impact them severely. And at the same time, it helps us to get more affordable housing than we're getting with the current program because it's a giant loophole, as I said in one meeting, large enough to drive a truck through, and the developers are driving trucks through it. So I just strongly support this change. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhonda.
Leo, it looks like you had your mic unmuted. Now it's muted. So go ahead and unmute your mic and you have the floor. Leo, can you unmute your mic? No, I can't unmute it for you. It only sends you a request, Leo. There you go. Your mic is unmuted, Leo. Can you speak to us? No. Leo, maybe try calling in. I'll put the number in the chat box for you.
Any other members of the public wishing to comment, Michelle, that you can see?
No.
Have you provided Leo the call-in number,
Yes,
Michelle?
I just sent it to him.
Okay, thanks.
Leo, it should be popping up on your screen.
Has he returned to chat, Michelle?
He has not.
Okay, unfortunately, I think we're going to need to move on given the length of our meeting tonight. Hopefully Leo can figure out how to contact us. I hope it's certainly not on our end. I don't think it is, but we'll certainly entertain if you'd like to chime in later in the meeting on this item, even though it'll be acted upon by the council beforehand. Any additional public comment, Michelle?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. I will go ahead and close the public hearing on item 7C of our agenda, which will be ordinance 20-17, and turn it back to the council for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I would approve, or excuse me, motion to approve ordinance number 20-17. And if I have a second, I would be happy to speak to that.
Thanks, Ben. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Quinnell. Ben.
Sure. So I would like to speak in favor of this motion. It is my belief that one of the things about how real estate development seems to work in town is projects get designed to the zoning code. And one of the logical extensions of that is that, I feel that the housing program itself is only going to be as good as its largest loophole. If we have large loopholes, then that's the projects we're going to get, because that's where the economic incentives are going to be for developers to build. So I do feel that this is something of a loophole. We have projects. I mean, if you look at a 7-unit development project, you're looking at project costs often into the several millions of dollars. We're allowing those projects to be built without any contribution to affordable housing, whereas in many other areas and with many other projects that are much smaller with far less resources, we are requiring it. I don't find that to be equitable. And, I believe that it's important that the projects that are proposed are the best possible projects. They're the best combination of building for the site, for the community, for the developer, et cetera. And I think when we have thresholds like this that are high enough that you're getting projects that are trying to skirt under the radar, I don't think we necessarily get that. So if you're doing a project that is, 5, 6, 7 units in size, I don't feel an administrative conditional use permit should be an unreasonable request. And so that is my basis for support of this ordinance. I certainly understand if other folks feel differently, but that would be my feeling. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Further comments from the council? Frank, any comments?
I have none at this time. Thank you.
Andy, comments?
None. I think Ben stated my feelings very well.
Rebecca.
Just another sidebar, I guess, is that we had a discussion about preserving the historic neighborhoods in town, and just the scale and massing of them. And so even though Wendy brought up good points as from a planning perspective, we've just had a lot of pushback from people that have invested in their homes and their community identity. Whoops, sorry about Rosie. And so this is just a way to do that, make sure that we're getting the right size of building in the right part of town. So I appreciate Ben for bringing it up.
Thanks, Rebecca. Brian, any comments tonight?
Nothing from me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Steve.
Yeah, I just do want to give voice to the idea that this could not work again to help us try to get more affordable housing. The reason we're going down in this number is to prevent builders from doing what happened by the school and building out to the maximum of what they can, and without having to go through at least even an administrative CUP. And we'll see. I don't know. Like I said in my comments at the planning board meeting, we're trying the best we can, and we don't know what the right formula is to get more affordable housing. And this seems like the next best step, but it is not a guarantee that it's going to do any of the things that we expected, that we would like it to do. And it's really not about protecting our downtown neighborhoods. It's about trying to get more affordable housing, really. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. With that said, we will take roll call. Michelle, please.
Councillor Cornell?
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councillor Davis?
In favor.
Councillor Hennon?
Aye.
Councillor Fury?
In favor.
And Councillor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Wendy, but don't go too far because we're staying with you, and we'll move on to item 7D, which is resolution 20-41, a resolution of the City Council to amend the Legacy Homes administrative procedures, and this begins on page 231 of the packet. Wendy.
Yeah. So this is the other half that the Strategic Housing Steering Committee brought to you folks back in October. You'll remember that there are two documents that implemented the Legacy Home Program. There was the actual zoning regulations that provided kind of the overall framework of the program, and then the details were actually in the administrative procedures. Those were adopted by resolution in 2019, and we expected that subsequent amendments would also be adopted by resolution. So attached to your resolution, there's a summary of changes memo that I put together. Some of the stuff was just sort of clarifying some of the sections and clarifying some of the language that was kind of funny that we found. We changed all the in lieu fee and fee in lieu to just fee in lieu. That was a comment that you folks brought up. We added the most recent area median income as an appendix, created a chapter for rentals and then a chapter for ownership. They're all kind of combined into one. And then removed references to pricing within the document, just directed everybody to Appendix A, which will be easier for us to update. And then the specific changes that we talked about at the work session that are included, we removed the details from the housing mitigation plan. Those are those things like what kind of HVAC equipment are you providing, and super detailed stuff that people don't know until the time of the deed restriction. We added clarifying language that the fees in lieu are paid and calculated at the time of building permit, along with other impact fees or final plat. We clarified the name of the housing fund where those fees in lieu are kept. It's called the city's Affordable Housing Fund. And we clarified also that these funds are appropriated by the city council at their discretion. There was a reference to a utility calculator that we actually didn't include in our Appendix A, and just simply direct folks to the Housing Authority because they can help people figure that out. So this comes into play when determining rental rates. If a landlord is paying some or none or all of the utilities, then their monthly rate will change for rentals. We added language that all unit square footages match the market rate units, and this is under both the rental section and the ownership. This is in response to a person who has a project where all the units were smaller than what we have in the our minimum square footage charts. And so we added that as an option that you folks can consider. We added the priority list for ownership units to match the rental units and the Housing Authority program documents, which is in-city workers, 59937 workers, and then everybody else is the third priority. And so we did advertise and put this in the pilot and had a draft online, and we didn't receive any comments. So I can go through these, or if you have any questions, we can look at specific things.
Great, thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy from the council on her staff report? And we'll start with Frank.
No questions.
Andy.
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Andy. Rebecca.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan.
No questions.
Okay, Steve?
No questions, thanks.
And finally, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be resolution 20-41, and we will hold that public hearing now. And I'll turn it back to Michelle to manage the public hearing.
Again, if you want to speak towards this agenda item, please raise your hand by your name in the participants page or by *3 on your phone. Right now, I do have one hand raised, and that's Rhonda. Rhonda, did you want to speak towards this?
Sorry, Michelle, I can't get my hand down now, but thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll give it just a little bit longer to give people a chance.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands raised.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on item 7D of our agenda, and I'll turn it back to the council for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we adopt Resolution 20-41, which is a resolution of the City Council amending the Legacy Housing Program administrative procedures.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Andy, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I have no comments.
Great. Further comments from the council? I just wanted to thank Wendy in particular, of course, the committee. I know any new zoning regulation out of the gate that obviously involves these detailed administrative procedures is not easy. The first year out of the gate, I think you guys have just done an incredible job trying to navigate this new regulation. So thanks very much for your work this past year and your continued work. With that said, Michelle, roll call, please.
I guess Mary's hand is raised. I didn't see that, Mary.
All right, close the public hearing.
Do you want to listen to hair, Mary, or?
I think the public hearing was closed. Michelle, does Mary have comments that we weren't able to acknowledge earlier?
Well, she just sent a chat saying that her hand is raised, but I don't see it on here. So
I'll certainly reopen the hearing for her comments if she's ready to provide those.
Okay, Mary, please unmute.
And I apologize. I have had problems in the past with this hand raising electronically. It worked earlier today, but not just now. And I appreciate the work the committee has done on this report. I did just want to point out, and particularly with the two earlier items on your agenda with the accessory apartments, we did have discussion at the Housing Committee meeting of increasing the reporting in the affordable housing report to broaden the information that is provided. And that didn't make it forward to you, but I do think it is an important goal for the committee, the Housing Committee, to work on to make sure that we're looking at units like accessory dwellings that do provide affordable housing in our community and are ways that we can provide density within our traditional neighborhoods and honor those. So I just hope the council will provide some leadership in helping to ensure that we get some more comprehensive reporting on our housing status in the city. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Michelle, I assume there's no other comment that we were remiss with. Sorry for the technological glitch, Mary. With that said, the public hearing is closed. There is a motion on the table for approval. We've heard comments from the council. Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Counselor Sweeney,
In favor.
Counselor Davis,
In favor.
Counselor Hennon,
Aye.
Counselor Fury,
In favor?
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does carry unanimously, which brings us on to item 7E of our agenda, which will be ordinance 20-18, if I'm not mistaken, which is an emergency ordinance providing for continued remote meetings of the city council, all city boards and committees. And we will waive the second hearing. This will be the only hearing this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My report begins on page 284 of the packet. I will not take you guys through the history of COVID because I think we've all been intimately familiar with it for the past 7 months. I will remind you that back in March of 2020, Governor Bullock issued a directive which encouraged local government to find ways to provide for the right of public participation in a remote setting. The Montana Attorney General subsequently issued a letter which confirmed that holding meetings remotely with the opportunity for public participation satisfies the constitutional mandates. We did, after the governor's directive, hold our meetings remotely. Then we returned to live meetings in early June. When we did return to live meetings, we had several meetings where there were numerous members of the public present. It was difficult to social distance. Additionally, some members of the public chose not to wear masks. And we did hear concern from council members, from board members, and from members of the general public that although they wished to participate in our meetings, they didn't feel comfortable doing so. So we did pass an emergency ordinance in September that lasted for 90 days. It is set to expire in December. Since we passed that emergency ordinance, we have been holding our meetings remotely. However, on November 17th, Governor Bullock issued a new directive directing that we limit public gatherings to 25 or less and urged the limitation of 15. We've also heard, I think, since Governor Bullock's directive that the public is still concerned about attending public meetings. I think it would be difficult, if not impossible, to comply with the directive if we were returned to live meetings. And as you are all aware, COVID has not slowed down in the Flathead, and it in fact has significantly increased since we even passed our emergency ordinance. So the proposed emergency ordinance is nearly identical to our previous emergency ordinance that's set to expire. It will provide that city council meetings will be held remotely with the opportunity for public participation until it's repealed. It also allows city boards and committees to hold remote meetings upon a majority vote. In accordance with the earlier emergency ordinances, it encourages the public to provide written comments, limits public comment to 3 minutes per individual, and provides that the city clerk will state the number of written comments that support or oppose the proposal or application. The costs have kind of already been incurred by the city. We already have a WebEx membership. We do incur about a 10 cent per minute per caller for those that choose to participate. And that cost is anticipated to be fairly minimal. Any costs that are incurred after December 30th will be paid with contingency funds that were set aside for COVID-19 related expenses. The CARES Act will pay the expenses of our remote meetings until December 30th. So staff does recommend that you approve Emergency Ordinance 2018. And in order to make sure that we can hold the first meeting in January and the last meeting in December remotely, that you waive a second reading. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Angie. Just for clarification, we've already canceled the second meeting in December, correct?
Yeah, we have, John. I think we left the option open of reinstating that meeting if need be, but as of right now, it is officially canceled.
Okay, thanks very much. for your staff report. I'll start with Frank. Any questions or comments for Angie?
Yeah. Angie, does this ordinance require that our boards and other committees have to now vote again to remain in remote, or do their commitment or their vote to stay remote in effect continue?
Frank, I would think that their commitment or choice to stay remote would continue, unless we hear otherwise.
Andy?
No question, John. Thank you. Thank you, Angie.
Thanks. Rebecca?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan?
No questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Ryan. Steve?
No questions. Thanks.
Thanks. And finally, Ben?
Thank you.
Okay. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 7E of our agenda, and we'll hold that public hearing now. I'll turn it back to Michelle. Michelle, any public comment this evening on this item?
Okay, we do have one, Richard Hiltner.
Mayor and councilors, Richard Hildner, 104 5th Street, Whitefish. And I'm going to be a little bit out of order. One of the problems that Leo was having, because he and I had a conversation on the telephone, and hovering over our names in the participant list does not always work. Sometimes you have to go to the little button, the circle that has 3 little dots on it, click on that, and it says more, and then you can raise your hand. And Leo wanted to talk about the trees at Town Pump and what happened there. And I hope during councilor comments at the end of the meeting, you will address that particular issue. Now to move on to the public hearing at hand. Oh, and by the way, I think Leo is still at least listening in. So I want to encourage you. I think I know how this is going to go, and I hope it goes the way I think it will. And that is that as painful as these meetings are to be held virtually, if we can't meet with our families and friends over the holidays, then we certainly shouldn't be gathering at City Hall. So please continue your virtual meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Michelle, further comments, either written or virtually?
I did not receive any other comments, and if anybody else is interested in speaking, please raise your hand, either by how Richard mentioned it or hovering over your name and raising your hand, or *3 on the phone. Nobody has chatted me and nobody is raising their hand, so we're good.
Let me go ahead and close the public hearing on item 7E of the agenda. Turn it back to the council for a motion, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-18, an emergency ordinance providing for meetings of the city council, city boards, and committees, and waiving second reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion? Steve, any comments on your motion?
Nothing else. Nope. Thank you.
Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Cornell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councilor Davis?
In favor.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
And Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does carry unanimously, which moves us on to 7F of our agenda, which will be our own ordinance 20-19, an ordinance amending the conditions of approval of the Trail View Planned Unit Development, or PUD, and this will be on first reading.
Unmute myself. Okay, there we go.
Wendy,
Good evening for my final one here. as you may recall, we don't see this too terribly often, but the subdivision regulations provide for someone to come before the city council to request a modification to a subdivision condition of approval. So that's why we're here before you and not going through planning board first and then to city council. So the city staff is requesting an amendment and clarification to condition 21 of the Trailview subdivision as it pertains to the purchaser qualification of deed restriction homes in that subdivision. You'll recall the subdivision was approved in 2018 along with the PUD overlay. There's 58 single family residential lots on a little more than 8 acres. It was subject to 24 conditions of approval with 3 phases. Phase 1 was final platted in 2019. Phase 2 is on tonight's agenda for final plat, and then phase 3 will be at some point in the future. As part of that PUD, the project was required to deed restrict 6 units. This was before the Legacy Home Program, and it was for folks earning a moderate income of those making 60 to 125 area median income, which is how it was defined at the PUD chapter at the time. That requirement was memorialized in condition number 20. The applicant originally proposed then half the remaining homes would be deed restricted by income for households earning 80 to 150% AMI, and the remaining units would be deed restricted for local workers, that is, those folks living in city limits, or 59937 like we talked about earlier, but would not be income restricted. Following some additional discussion with the subdivision, the pricing, it was agreed that the pricing of the remaining units would follow the 80 to 150% AMI, and condition 21 was written as it is in the packet. Again, this project predates the Legacy Home Program, and their only affordable housing obligation was 6 units. The applicant entered into an affordable housing agreement with the city in which the applicant agreed to provide 2 additional units. So then we're getting 8 serving the moderate income. And then according to the agreement, the remaining units were to serve individuals making 30 to 140% area median income. So the applicant is working towards completing the subdivision and constructing homes and entering into buy-sell agreements with prospective purchasers. But a discrepancy has come up between the applicant's original intent for the remaining deed-restricted homes, the whereas clauses in the PUD chapter, and then the final language in condition number 21. To ensure a broad range or a viable project, it was understood that a broad range of purchasers would be needed to make sure that this subdivision would work. Since the folks with income of 80 to 150% may not be always readily available or in a position to buy, that half the homes would not be income restricted for purchasers. So as described above, the original intent was for 50% of those homes to not have an income limitation, but be available to local workers. You folks might recall our consultant for the affordable housing stuff called this a light deed restriction, where it wasn't subject to income limitations. But all the other deed restriction limitations would remain, including the cap on appreciation, and that the home would need to be their primary residence, and that they would not be able to rent it out. But somehow that 50% of homes not being income limited was eliminated as part of that condition. And we think this is a bit of a misunderstanding on all of our parts because we are so new to the affordable housing, the difference between deed restriction for affordability, the pricing, and then the purchasing restrictions. So staff did notice adjacent landowners place a sign on the property and put illegal in the pilot. We did receive one email that was included in the packet that Michelle sent you. This individual had questions about what a local worker, how you define that. And again, those are the people that work in the city limits. And then the role of the housing authority, which they are a party to the deed restrictions. So staff is recommending council approve the requested amendment to clarify condition number 21, that at least 50% of the remaining units have purchase restrictions based on income for individuals. And that would be the only change that we're proposing to make. And Angie, if she might be able to answer some questions if I can't answer them, so we're here to tag team on this one. It's
great. Thanks, Wendy.
Oh, look at it. Thanks.
Sure is. Any questions for Wendy or Angie? And we'll start with Frank.
If I'm following you correctly, Wendy, what we're trying to do here is put it back to the way it was, which is all of the homes will effectively be price restricted.
Correct.
But only 50% of the homes will be income restricted.
Correct.
Thank you.
So Frank, and maybe I can follow up on this a little bit too, because it is extremely confusing, and I really appreciate Wendy doing the staff report on it. She took a big burden off of me. I think the intent behind it would be all of the homes are deed restricted for local workers, and all of the appreciation will be controlled when they go to sell it. But half of them will be purchase restricted for, and this is half of the 50 that are remaining, or the 52 that are remaining, because keep in mind 6, and this is why this is so confusing, 6 of them, were required to serve moderate income families. Half of the remaining units would be purchase restricted for those making, between 80 and 150% of AMI. The rest of them would not have that purchase restriction. So if somebody was making 180 AMI and they wanted to buy one of those homes, they could, but they would still be a deed restriction on it, and the appreciation would still be capped at 3%, and it would still be a stock of affordable housing. So hopefully that doesn't make it any more complicated and makes it better.
It does. Andy, questions?
No, I had questions, but Frank asked the right one. Angie and Wendy both explained what my concerns are, not my concerns, but what my misunderstanding was. And so I got it. So thank you.
Thanks. Rebecca.
Could you just run through a scenario? So, like in today's current AMI, so what you're saying is the original intention was not written into the final plat, so we're going to change the final plat to reflect that. Someone can buy one of these 50, the 50% of the total 58 units. They can be as wealthy as they want to be, but their income has to be a certain amount. And whenever they sell the unit, it can't depreciate more than 3%. Is that right? And they're not available for short-term units.
Sure. So yeah, Rebecca, if let me just walk you through a scenario. If for some reason, and I think Jerry, if Jerry's on, he can talk to us a little bit more at the public hearing. I think if somebody wants to buy a unit and there's nobody available in this, 50 to 100 or 80 to 150% AMI range, somebody could be wealthy and buy one of these. Why they would do that when their appreciation is capped, I don't think it would probably happen. But yes, they still cannot rent it out. It still must be their primary residence, and they still are capped at 3% appreciation when they go to sell it. So even though the person buying it made more than 100% AMI, it is still, affordable housing stock. And there might be instances where, there's nobody available in this 80 to 100% AMI range that wants to buy the unit. It's in Jerry's best interest to sell the unit. It's in the city's best interest for Jerry to sell the unit because, again, it's still affordable housing stock.
The thing that's confusing is you kind of want them to go to people that really need a break, and so that I was so excited about this project that it would actually kind of enable people that are just starting out or to get ahead. And so I never thought it would be for anybody with wealth to invest in Whitefish, kind of. And so that's my only concern, if we're going to be getting that instead of workforce housing.
And Rebecca, my understanding from Jerry, and again, I don't know if Jerry's on, but he could probably speak to more to this, is most of these units, they are going to people between 80 and 150% of AMI. So I understand that concern for sure, but again, I don't think that was Jerry's intent, and I think that we were so new to this that, deed restrictions were confusing and what the intent was confusing. I actually went back through the minutes and it was very confused. So I understand your concern, but I don't think that my understanding from Jerry is that he's just going to be selling these to wealthy people. I think he's definitely looking for that 80 to 150% of AMI. And, my understanding too is that's the Housing Authority is supportive of this as well.
Ryan, any questions? Ryan, questions tonight for Angie?
It's for me.
And Steve?
Nothing for me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, John. Angie, my question is, so who's in charge of these 52 houses or the 26 at least?
I think I'm frozen. No questions for me if you can hear me.
Can hear you, thanks.
So there's 26 houses that can be sold at any price, but there's 52 units they can't be sold at any price. They can be sold to any income level. But does the Housing Authority do all of the units go through the Housing Authority?
They have been going through the Housing Authority, Steve, and it was kind of a weird one because it predates the Legacy Homes program, but Jerry has been working with the Housing Authority on all the units.
Okay, I just wonder because what could happen, and I'm not saying this will, but what could happen is that on these other 26 homes, you can get into a bidding war up to the maximum amount that they could be sold for. And then that starts the price at the higher level that can be then 3% per year. And do you see what I'm saying? Is there anything that accounts for that these all need to go through the Housing Authority so that if there is a buyer that is matched up instead of leaving them kind of on the open market for anybody?
The Housing Authority is working with Jerry to set the initial price, yes. And then it will be tracked through the Housing Authority when it goes to be sold.
Is there any requirement that requires him to use the Housing Authority to find the buyers? That's my question.
I believe maybe our affordable housing agreement does require that, Steve. I know that's what has been done, but
Do you see what I'm getting at? Is that it could, there's 26 units that could sort of be on the open market in terms of incomes buying those places, which would drive the price up to the top level of those homes, which we don't necessarily want.
Yeah, and Steve, pursuant to our affordable housing agreement, he is working through the Housing Authority, and they are setting the maximum price for the initial sale.
Okay. Still not sure we have. I'm still not sure that I feel comfortable. But I don't think this language changes that possibility anyway. So, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And Ben?
No questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be ordinance 20-19. We'll hold that public hearing now. I'll turn it over to Michelle to manage the public hearing. And your name and address for the record, please.
Again, if you want to speak towards this agenda item, please raise your hand by hovering over your name on the participants list on the right side of your screen, or click the three little dots on the bottom of your screen, and there's a hand icon there, or *3 on your phone. Jerry Dunker is on. His hand is raised, and I believe he's unmuted. So go ahead, Jerry. Jerry, I don't know that we can hear you.
Well, now can you hear me?
Yep, now we can. There you go.
I don't think I can get video where I'm at. I'm on a hotspot, but I just wanted to try and answer some of the questions that came up and obviously answering more questions, but to Rebecca first, I think it was, I want to clear up that the 50% is a priority. So if we have buyers that are under the 150%, they will have priority over any buyer that has an income over 150%. That 50% of homes is just a maximum amount that could go to buyers over 150%, but hopefully we're going to have everyone under that. The whole intent of this from the beginning was just to keep the project moving. They can't sit there. We need to build them and sell them as fast as we can to make it efficiently and keep these prices down. And then to see if, yeah, we're working with the housing authority. I'm not sure if we're required or not, but we are, and we will continue to do that. Every applicant goes through Lori, and she determines what their income level is. They fill out all the applications, and if they are above the 150, she just kicks that back to us and lets us decide. Right now, of our first 14 under contract, only 3 of them have been slightly above the 150, and I think when the new numbers come out next year, the new AMIs, at least one of those will be under the 150%. Trying to think what else there was. If anything else I can answer?
Not seeing any, Jerry, but
I have
please.
a quick question, John. I mean, Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I just was wondering, are you having difficulty getting these sold, or is it just COVID was kind of slowing things down? Is it going as you intended it to, I guess? Because it was such a new concept when you brought it forth, and I just wanted to know how is it going on your end?
Well, things are going well. I mean, everyone's affected by COVID, obviously, and everyone's also affected by our crazy market here right now with building and selling. And it's definitely been an education process for everyone involved, including realtors and just everyone about what affordable housing is. We really just had to get some completed so people can see what it's all about. And now it's been going great. We can't build them fast enough, which is a good problem, but still a problem. And one other, I just remember one other thing that Steve had brought up about the prices going up. We have a set price, and we don't take bids on that. Like it is what it is, and whoever's the most qualified as far as income restrictions, asset restrictions, and working at the 5937, they get priority, and no one can offer us more money. We won't go up on that. What we have been doing is increasing our prices by the 3% annually or 1.5% or 6 months, because if we have any buyers that want to sell right now, we don't want them to be competing with new homes that are cheaper than theirs, so we're trying to keep up with their appreciation.
Thanks, Jerry. Any further questions from the council for Jerry tonight? Otherwise, we'll go to public comment. Thanks, Jerry, for participating. Michelle?
If anybody would like to speak towards this, I don't see any hands, but we'll give it a minute. Please raise your hand, *3 by phone, hover over your name and click the hand icon or the 3 dots at the bottom of the page. Or if you're unable to do that and need to speak and you can't speak, please send me a chat in the chat box and I can ask that question that you typed in. I don't see any, John. It looks like we're good.
All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and turn it back to the council for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion approving our ordinance number 20-19, which is an ordinance amending the conditions of approval of the Trailview planned unit development, specifically changing language in condition number 21.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Andy, any comment on your motion?
Yeah, just super briefly, just kind of a couple things that were brought up by Steve and Rebecca both. As we all recall, we really were only going to get 6 units out of this, and they, out of a very good faith effort to the community, offered all of the units to be in the affordable housing stock pool for perpetuity, which I thought was great of them. Thank you, Jerry. And I think that while we may see some people possibly buy at the high end of the price because they have a little bit more income, that's not something I think is a huge concern. And I think Jerry addressed that very well by saying people that are in the 80 to 150% do have priority, and they are working with the housing authority, which again, they didn't have to do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we're getting all of these units that will be in the housing stock of affordability for this community for time immemorial. And that's awesome. So I heartily support the motion.
Thank you, Andy. Further comments from the council? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councillor Quinnell,
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councillor Davis,
Favor.
Councillor Hennon,
Aye.
Councillor Fury,
In favor.
and Councillor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does carry unanimously. How's everyone doing? Do you want to take a 5-minute break or move through item 8 of the agenda? Why don't we move through item 8, given the fact that Jerry is probably going to be staying on the line for that, and it'd be good to work through that item so he can carry on with his evening. So with that said, we will move on to item 8A, which is consideration of a request for a final plat for Trailview Phase 2, a 58-lot subdivision located south of Gorman Road and west of Monaghan Road. The property zone WR1 with a PUD overlay in the one-family residential district. And I will turn it back to Wendy for her staff report.
So generally, final plats are on the consent agenda, but we just sort of felt like since we were going to be looking at condition 21, that we would put it on the consent agenda in case there was any further discussion. I don't really have anything else to add. They've had all the conditions of approval, whether it's the new condition 21 or the former condition 21.
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Pretty straightforward action item this evening. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I would do it then. I would make a motion that will approve the request for the final plat for the Trailview subdivision, Phase 2, a 50-lot subdivision located south Gorman Road, west of Monaghan, Zone WR1 WPUD, one-family residential district, with the planned unit development overlay that we just recently amended condition number 21.
Thanks, Andy. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Sweeney. Any comments on the motion, Andy? Other than you already shared?
None other than, again, thank you, Jerry. It's a great project. Every time I go out there on my favorite bike ride around there, Poop Loop, as I call it, it's, yeah, it's awesome. Good job.
Further comments from the council? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councillor Quinnell,
Aye.
Councillor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councillor Davis,
In favor.
Councillor Hennon,
Aye.
Councillor Fury,
Aye.
and Councillor Norton. Thank you.
And that motion is unanimous as well. Michelle, why don't we go ahead and just take about a 6-minute break, and we'll reconvene at about 8:50. Stay on the line. Thanks. think we still got a few folks absent. Michelle, you mind doing a quick attendance call?
No problem. Counselor Quinnell?
I'm here.
Counselor Sweeney?
I'm here.
Counselor Davis?
Present.
Counselor Hennon? Counselor Hennon?
I'm here.
Okay. Counselor Fury?
Present.
And Counselor Norton?
Present.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. We're back in session and we will carry on with item 9A of our agenda, which is consideration of a request to authorize Dana Smith, our city manager, to negotiate and execute a contract with Robert Pescia and Associates for design services for the Armory Park Master Plan. And I'll turn this over to Maria.
Good evening. We did advertise for proposals from qualified firms for engineering services for the Armory Park Master Plan. We received 2 proposals from Jacola and from RPA. We interviewed both, and after some conversation, we did decide to go with RPA and Bruce Booty, mainly because of the history that they bring to this project. This project is covered by multiple funds, one being an LWCF grant, as well as resort tax, impact fees, Greenfield grant for adult fitness equipment, parkland acquisition and development funds, and stormwater funds. And if you have any questions, I can certainly answer those, but I am asking this evening that you authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with RPA for design services for the Armory Park Master Plan.
Thanks, Maria. Any questions for Maria on her staff report?
No questions, Mr. Mayor, but I was on the selection committee with Maria, and I think RPA was clearly the best candidate for this particular project, certainly given their history and the team they put together.
Great. Good to hear. I know they'll serve us well. Any further comments or questions for Maria? We will need a motion to that effect, please.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Please do.
See, I would move to approve the request to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with Robert Pescia and Associates for design services for the Armory Park Master Plan.
Thanks, Ryan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion?
No, sir.
Thanks, Ryan. All those in favor? Actually, Michelle, roll call, please.
Counselor Quinnell?
Aye.
Counselor Sweeney?
In favor.
Counselor Davis?
Aye.
Counselor Hennon?
Aye.
Counselor Fury?
Aye.
And Counselor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That motion does carry unanimously. We'll move on to item 10 of our agenda. Thanks, Maria, by the way. Move on to item 10 of our agenda, which is communications from our city manager. You have Dana's report and close with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her manager's report, and anything else to add this evening on your end, Dana?
Thank you, Mayor Wilfold. I'll just add a couple items. One, I wanted to just bring to your attention here, this highlighted section of my report about a resolution of support for the task force messaging and the need to follow public health guidance and requirements that are currently in effect. The task force discussed at our last meeting the need to expedite this. With our canceled meeting at the or the second meeting in December canceled, there's really not much option for a resolution unless we were to hold that meeting. The other option is a letter from the council that we might be able to draft and get that out. But the overall consensus from the task force members was that this would be ideal coming out before the holidays and winter break for many students and college students returning home. So I would like for the council to consider either holding a second meeting in December or scheduling a special session for a resolution. If that's not something you're interested in doing, I would recommend that we add that at a minimum to our January first meeting in January. The health board discussions with the county seem to have stalled out. Unfortunately, it sounds like there is concerns at the commissioner level or I guess the county level about us wanting to come on during a pandemic and the complications that could, I guess, cause. I know that Columbia Falls and Whitefish were on board. We talked about the funding issues with both Mike Pence as well as their finance director. I'm just not sure what has stalled it. And so at this point, I wouldn't see the need for a second meeting in December because of that. Their last indication was that this would be something that would be ongoing discussions and definitely not before the first of the year. What that means to me is that they're not willing to allow Whitefish to have one of the spots that are coming open at the end of the year. Although I must say state law requires that a class two city like us has a health department. They are levying on our behalf for a health department. I think that we are entitled to a position on that board because of that. And so, you know, I will keep pushing with them, but it seems to have stalled out unexpectedly. Last I had heard before last Friday was that we were moving forward and they were drafting the contract or the interlocal agreement. So I will keep you posted on that and where that might go. I do want to share real quickly with you just one of the great accomplishments that's occurred downtown today. You'll see, thanks to Jen Cybrant and her staff for getting these hung throughout Whitefish. We have our new banners that are encouraging individuals to mask up as our goal is to get this out before the ski hill opens up, and we've met that goal. You'll see these throughout downtown and different pictures, different individuals representing different areas of our community. So those just went up today. And so I think, you know, that we could talk about the resolution if you'd like to later on at the COVID agenda item, but I wanted to make sure, since it could be a longer meeting, that we did at least discuss the task force recommendation.
Thanks, Dana. Do you want to discuss that now? Is that your preference?
It's up to you and the council. I mean, I think if we could address it now, that might be the only COVID topic that I have right now for myself, at least, in the task force.
Well, I know personally I'm being a member of that task force, even though I missed the last meeting. I'm obviously very supportive of the city drafting either a joint letter or a standalone letter. And if we needed to do so, if Columbia Falls came around or the other municipalities and it triggered the need to hold a second meeting, I'd be willing to do so personally. But I'd like to hear from the rest of the council as well.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it's the one request that that task force has really kind of made or asked us to participate in. When asked what else can we do, they thought this was important, and given that their commitment is as high as it is, I think we should do what we can to facilitate what they need, particularly before the holidays. And so I would be in favor of a special meeting or anything else that we needed to do to get that done.
Other comments from the council? Steve.
I'm a little confused because it seems like what I'm reading is that the second meeting would be about the interlocal agreement regarding getting someone on the health department, on the health board, Are we talking about a second meeting to pass a resolution to support the task force recommendations?
Thanks for asking. I know it's kind of confusing because it did change. So the idea was that we hope to have that interlocal agreement. That you can just say goodbye to that right now. It sounds like until next year. But we're just talking about the resolution for support and encouraging our public to follow the public health guidance from the council. So you could do that as the second meeting in December. You could schedule a special session the week before if you don't like the week of Christmas, since a lot of people are taking time off then, or you could wait till January. But I think the task force was pretty strong that they wanted it before the holidays.
Okay, thanks. I would support meeting briefly for that. I also think we need to figure out whatever pressure we need to put on the county to make this happen. It's clear in the law that we're allowed to have a member on that board. And I really don't understand why we haven't and why they're pushing back against it. So,
Couldn't agree more.
We have to sue them. I mean, I don't know. Is that what we have to do?
You know, I think, Angie and I can look into the code and maybe we can write a strong written letter. We're in a little different position than Columbia Falls, who is not a Class 2 city yet. But all of the interlocal, the state law does require that it's an interlocal agreement between two parties. Our only other option is to have our own health department, which I've explored the idea with Hillary after she had left the health department. And it does sound like quite a bit to bite off for just us as municipalities. So, we'll pretty quick. They're saying we brought it up in the middle of the pandemic. I actually had started talking to Doug about it well before COVID hit. And so just the timing, it appears to be that way. But that was not our intent. So I think let us work on it a little bit longer before we get into any ideas of suing them or anything like that.
I have a question, if I could.
Of course.
So Dana, we've never had representation on the health board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and but the county commissioners get to appoint who they want, and 2 people are leaving. Is that correct?
That is correct, with the exception of Kalispell. They have a permanent seat on that board for one of their council members. That the city county health department was created between Kalispell and Flathead County. Whitefish and Columbia Falls at that time were not required to have a health department. So we were not party to that. We were just covered by the county. Whitefish hit that limit when we became a Class 2 city. And so at the last census. So that's when we could have added. There was miscommunication, it looked like, between the prior city manager that stated we didn't have to have a health department at Class 2, but it actually does say that we have to have one at Class 2, that it's Class 3 that you do not have to have one. It's optional.
So who enforces us to have access to a health board as a Class 2 city? I mean, are we we're not in compliance with the state law then?
Well, our citizens are covered by the Flathead County Health Department. So I would argue that they are paying for that service right now because the county levies mills on the behalf of our citizens for that. But the difference is that we're at the point where we can have and should have our own health department. So if they're going to continue to levy on behalf of our citizens, we should have participation on that board. And so we are somewhat in violation, but I would say not to an extent that would cause concern. Health departments are better ran at a county-wide level than city level when you talk about immunizations and public health directives. When you talk about it also includes septic permits and those kind of issues when you're in the county. So it would operate somewhat different it includes like looking at businesses for health codes for lodging and restaurants. So it's interesting where we are sitting today. But I think we will keep working as hard as we can to move forward. I think we do have the stronger case than all the cities, than Columbia Falls, I guess, at this point.
All right. And is Columbia Falls thinking they're going to trigger into a second class city with the next census?
They do. So those results come out in March. So they are expected to be a class 2. So their city council, last I heard, was looking into this and potentially wanting to add early, but just knowing that it was likely coming in March. But at this point, I'm not sure. They're not going to want to be a part of it without a seat at the table. And I think that that's the concern, is if we wait till January, when do we get to fill our seat? Is it now a year from, at the end of December of 2021? Or would they allow us to refill a seat? There is an individual, Bill Berg, he is a Whitefish resident who's on the health board. And so he was appointed by the county commissioners. But, they'd said, well, maybe he could be a representative. And I would recommend 100% that it be an elected official, because they have a county commissioner on that board. Kalispell has their city council on that board. It's clearly a political board based on what's occurred this year.
Yeah, well, it's been quite a political year. All right, well, thank you for that. And I would be happy to meet for a resolution later on if the rest of the council and the mayor have a will for that. I'm a little confused about what we would be doing with a resolution. I tried to write one, it didn't go anywhere, and so I'm just thinking, my main concern is I was waiting to hear what our governor-elect was going to be doing with COVID, and he's only had one press conference, so I just wasn't sure how much our the recommendations are going to change and all that January 1st. So the mayor had an idea of adopting Governor Bullock's current directives to carry us over until we knew more, so that we weren't without something. And so that was one thing that I think we should discuss too, if that's an option. But I'm okay either way. It's, as we know, it's a big crisis. So, okay.
Dana, related to the board seat, you've indicated strongly that it should be an elected official. I've actually had some medical professionals, medical doctors approach me about this. They're tracking it pretty closely. They're aware that we deserve a seat at the table. Could we consider an outside appointment?
You could. Kalispell has always had their city councilor on there. You're approving a budget that levies, taxpayers in your jurisdiction, or recommends, I should say. It's approved by the county commissioners. But you could, but I also think that the elected representative or the elected official could, reach out to doctors if they had questions. Generally we're not dealing with a pandemic. And so this year is abnormal, at least we hope so going forward, that you're generally dealing with septic permits and other kind of health code items.
Yeah. Okay.
If I could ask a question on that topic, do you know what the process looks like to put forth a candidate? And is there some means that we could put forth a candidate that would require the commission to vote on it or interview them or something?
So do you mean just currently how it is?
Just put somebody in somebody's hat in the ring.
I don't know if their application period has closed out. I know that, Roger Noble's position was up. I believe I'm assuming he's reapplied, but I don't know what the date was for those applications. I'm not sure if they've posted Tamalee's position or not, that I believe is coming up at the end of this year, believing she's stepped down. It would be watching the county commissioner's website on their notices for board openings. But I do think, anybody could apply right now, whether or not they would select an elected official from Whitefish or not. I'm not sure.
Well, maybe we should try and make a bunch of noise about it.
Yeah.
I want to say that it might already be closed though.
I'm not positive. Yeah, I know the first one I think is, I'm not sure about the second position because Tamalee came out a little bit later. on her announcement. So I'm not sure if that was included or not, but I could check and send out an email to the council though, and let you know.
Okay. Dana, anything else to report on?
Not for that this evening.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 10C of our agenda, which will be resolution 20-42. A resolution approving an interlocal agreement for fire protection services within the Whitefish Fire Service Area. And I'll turn it back to Dana for her staff report. But before I do, I just wanted to thank Dana and Joe Page in particular for their diligent work in negotiating what I feel is a reasonable contract. It's not perfect, but it's a step forward with the county and memorializes our cooperative relationship as we address fire service area in the district. So thank you, Dana and Joe, for your steadfast work and getting us to this point. It's important. Dana.
Thank you, Mayor Mulfeld. Appreciate that. The agreement is in your packet and starts on page 406. I'm just going to touch on a few of the main talking points this evening. The first, or I guess a few of the main changes that have occurred. As you know, Whitefish has always been trying to work this contract to where we get the amount that we feel represents the cost of service. This is a changing number as our budgets increase every year. But we feel that we've made some really good progress this year. The term of the agreement is the first item that has really changed. Last year, the current contract is a 5.5-year contract. This contract is now a 5-year contract on a fiscal year basis. But what it does allow is it allows for the fire service area to explore a volunteer fire department option, which was very strongly, there was strong interest by the Fire Service Area Board to look into based on our costs going up every year. So what we're allowing them to do is if after 3 years of this contract, they are ready with a volunteer fire department to respond to calls and to accept all fire-related calls in the fire service area, then we would allow them to terminate this agreement. We do have a section in here that details the means of that transition period. State law only allows one fire chief at a time. While they might have a fire chief ready to go, we need a date specific. So they do have to give us 6 months notice if they are planning to transition. There's a lot to do with a transition when you think about who's being toned out from the 911 center, and all of those negotiating, say, a new contract for mutual aid, but it's included here in section 16. The next main area is compensation. We have been able to increase compared to our current contract, and if the 1.89% annual increase continued through this contract, we've actually been able to negotiate an additional $200,000 of compensation over the next 5 years. If we had just compared to if we had just let the current contract continue. That includes a $100,000 one-time payment for capital equipment. We have plans to procure a Type 3 engine next year, which would be servicing the fire service area. And that piece of equipment comes in at about $450,000. So this $100,000 does go quite a ways to at least pay for a portion of that piece of equipment. We also have our annual payments that are, I should say annual, they're an annual total amount that is split into 2 payments, one we receive in July and one we receive in January. And what we've done there is our costs or the compensation has increased from fiscal year 21 this year of $302,100 to $314,189 in fiscal year 22. And then that increases each year 4%. One item I do want to bring to your attention is the burn room, the burn tower. This has been an ongoing issue. It sounds like for some time. We had a instance where there was a training that was performed at that facility and there was some damage done. While the damage we feel is fairly insignificant, and that facility is older, there was damage. And so we've agreed to pay up to 50%, or pay 50% of the repairs and upgrades up to $30,000, and the remainder will be paid by the Whitefish Fire Service Area. We do get to use this facility for our training. It is our only burn room that we have, burn tower, to train at. We actually do also receive ISO points for our citizens because we are contracted to be able to use this facility as a training facility. So if at one point the fire service area does split off and has their own volunteer department, we might have to look at building our own training facility so that we can meet the training requirements for our firefighters. We have provided just clarification that if a transition to a volunteer fire department occurs, that our firefighters are assisted by, or our firefighters, excuse me, our paramedics are assisted by firefighters in the Whitefish Fire Service Area. Oftentimes we're asked, why does our fire truck respond to an ambulance call? And often it's when we're having, when they need to lift or carry patients, vehicle extraction, water and ice rescue, traffic control, which is a very serious thing considering Highway 93 is in the fire service area where we see a lot of our car accidents. We need those larger fire trucks to not only provide traffic control, but to protect the paramedics that are on site. Overall, though, we do have some more annual reporting requirements. We did clarify the Whitefish Fire Service Area boundaries. That the Fire Service Area Board may consider changes, but until the City Council approves that, those extensions will not be covered by this agreement. Because sometimes when, say, the Fire Service Area wants to expand into a new area, it could mean additional services that we would have to provide based on this agreement. So we want to be able to negotiate that cost if there is one associated with that extension, and or be prepared to respond. So this is typically how this was written. I guess currently is written that the City Council considers it first before the Whitefish Fire Service Area Board. But really, the board is responsible for providing the fire service area. They contract with the city to do that. And so if they extended their boundaries, they would either have to contract with us or another fire department, or have their own volunteer fire department for that area, which would be, I think, complicated and unlikely. But there is the caveat that the final approval or disapproval does stay with the Flag County Commissioners. I think, the overall, though, I think that both Joe and I feel that this is an agreement that both continues to provide service to the Whitefish Fire Service Area residents, and also addresses some of the concerns for our citizens and taxpayers. And so I would respectfully recommend that the City Council approve the resolution that would allow the execution of this agreement. And Joe, do you have any comments you'd like to add that I missed?
No, thank you, Dana, for doing that. And that was a great job negotiating with them. Thanks again for that.
Yeah, Joe's phenomenal to work with, and I appreciate all of his efforts as well. And we are happy to see this move forward. I guess the last item I did forget to mention is the Fire Service Area Board. Once we have approval from the council, they'll meet. They haven't had any comments on this final draft, so it's anticipated that they will meet after this meeting to sign the contract, assuming you approve it. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Chief Page. Any questions for either from the council, or can I have a motion, please?
I have one question, Mayor. Will the rates stay the same for the people in the district, Dana?
So the Whitefish Fire Service Area Board would be the ones to determine that, but I believe that they've indicated that they will stay the same. But again, that is up to them on their financial planning. Currently, I think they collect about $450,000 And on our last year of the contract, we would be requiring $367,000 roughly. So again, that's in their realm of determining, but I would say it's likely staying the same for their residents.
Thank you and Joe both for working so hard on this. It was it was fun to watch because there was so much involvement from the community. So, well, mostly fun. I mean, I learned a lot, so I appreciated it. I know it was hard too, but it's so important to so many people. So thanks for your perseverance.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve Resolution 20-42, a resolution approving an interlocal agreement for fire protection services with the Whitefish Fire Service Area.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
That was seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Cook,
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney,
In favor.
Councilor Davis,
In favor.
Councilor Hennon,
Aye.
Councilor Fury,
In favor?
and Councilor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. That was unanimous, which brings us quickly, or not really quickly, but we will move on to item 10D, Resolution 20-43, a resolution approving the deed of trust and other loan documents securing the WAVE financing with Glacier Bank.
All right, I'm going to share again. Get to the right page here. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Mulfeld. This evening, I am presenting to you a resolution that would approve the deed of trust and other loan documents securing the WAVE building, lands, and personal property for a financing with Glacier Bank for the nonprofit that operates the WAVE building. So in 2004, the city of Whitefish entered into an agreement with the Whitefish Community Aquatic and Health Center, which is the nonprofit that operates the WAVE. Since 2004, we've executed numerous agreements with the nonprofit, including the transfer of the ownership of the building, the related improvements, and personal equipment within that facility. And just a little bit of history, in 2013, the City Council agreed to provide the real and personal property of 1250 Baker Avenue, the address of the WAVE, as collateral for a roughly $3.5 million loan that was used to finance the expansion of the WAVE. So since March, the WAVE board, the management of the facility, and staff have been responding to COVID-19. They've been really great about following all public health directives and guidance. Sometimes the WAVE board has actually kept more restrictive measures in place to ensure the health and well-being of their employees and customers. Just like every other business in Whitefish, there are some financial hardships that the WAVE is facing, but they've been really great about making sure that they have taken every opportunity to apply for funding through grants, the Paycheck Protection Program. They were awarded a grant from the Whitefish Community Foundation, as well as other loans and grants to the state. So one of the new items that came out from the state was the Montana Working Capital Program through the Montana Board of Investments. And the WAVE board did approve moving forward, which I do hold a seat on. I was unsure, well, I guess I did not know that we would be securing the loan with the property of the WAVE that we own. So that's why this was a last minute agenda item. The WAVE was awarded a $500,000 loan through Glacier Bank. And what that also includes is a $175,000 grant that will pay off a portion of that loan. So long story short, the WAVE would receive $500,000 from Glacier Bank, and then immediately the Montana Board of Investments pays that $500,000 down to $325,000. So the WAVE would only owe $325,000 on that loan. Right now, there is no anticipated uses for the $325,000. The wave has the options of holding that in reserves and then doing a payoff 1 year after the loan is processed. So basically, the wave can get $175,000 grant for 1 year's worth of interest, which is a really great deal. But knowing that COVID isn't over, there might be needs for this loan for operations. There is some risk to this proposal, which is to use the building and the real and personal property as collateral. I feel that is very low risk based on the history of the wave operations, sitting on the wave board and reviewing the financials monthly, if not more frequently during COVID. And so default is unlikely, but should the wave, the nonprofit, not default on their loan, this property could go into foreclosure. And at that point, the city council would have to determine if they would want to fund that loan and make sure that we retain that asset forever, or at least for the future, for the citizens and community. On just a note, I guess, currently of the wave building and personal property, that's estimated about $13.3 million. And currently we have about 2.07 million collateralized already from 2013. This would just increase that to 2.57 million. So that ratio is fairly low. Based on this, the low risk and the increased benefits to the wave, which is a community asset, one that has a scholarship program, since it is a publicly owned property. I do recommend that the city council approve the resolution, which includes allowing me to execute the deed of trust and other loan documents on behalf of the city. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Dana. Any questions for Dana, or can I have a motion, please, on this item?
I just have a quick question, Dana. Since you sit on the board and you see the financials, is their membership way down?
Membership is down. I wouldn't say way down, but it is down. One of the areas that's hurting us through the summer months was we did not allow one-time visitor passes just because we wanted to keep the members safe. And that's actually generates quite a bit of revenue for the wave. But this last month, I want to say we finally had a positive month where we broke even. And so that's good. Luckily, there was reserves that we had on hand, to weather the storm. And so it is very, it's ran financially smart to be prepared for these kind of downturns.
Okay, and so they don't really have a plan for this money, though? They just want to get the money because they can?
The grant funds would go to help support. So we do have some loans outstanding that are not secured by the bank, by our property. And so, those grant funds could be used to fund operations so that we can pay back some of those other loans, or just to refill our reserves. So again, the extra $325,000, there's no plans for that. So that could be used if needed, but really that could just be paid back within 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Steve. Motion, please.
Mr. Mayor.
I will move. Go ahead, Frank.
Carry on, Steve. Carry on.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 20 dash, I lost the number, sorry, 44?
43.
Resolution approving the deed of trust and other loan documents securing the wave financing with Glacier Bank.
Thanks, Steve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? Michelle, roll call, please.
Councilor Quinnell?
Aye.
Councilor Sweeney?
In favor.
Councilor Davis?
In favor.
Councilor Hennon?
Aye.
Councilor Fury?
In favor.
And Councilor Norton?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, and that's unanimous. For the record, we'll move on to item 11A. You have a letter of support that Dana drafted for the Flathead Community Health Center's application for continuation of the services they provide. Any comments on the letter? I thought it was very well written, Dana, and thank you for tackling that. Any comments on the letter? Not seeing any. You also have a letter enclosed given the recent events from last weekend at the town pump location located at 6045 US Highway 93 South related to the removal of, I believe, were 10 trees, 10 or 12 mature trees at the site. You have the letter from town pump enclosed in the packet. While they did try to comment earlier this evening, Dan Sampson with town pump, as well as Joe Murphy, the lead engineer on the project, they have joined us this evening, and I would like to give them the opportunity to at first present the letter and kind of what transpired at the site from their perspective, and then I'll turn it back to the council for any questions you may have of Dan and Joe and our next steps moving forward, if that's okay with the council. And I think that they are still on the call, if I'm not mistaken, Dana.
Yes, both of them are on.
Okay, so Michelle, if you don't mind acknowledging either Dan or Joe or both if they're together in a room, and thank them both for coming. I'm sure they're listening, and obviously this is a item that was brought to my attention, Dan and Joe, on Friday afternoon, and I went out to the site on multiple occasions, and given the holiday, was really unable to make much progress to deal with the matter at hand while it was occurring. So I appreciated the fact that our city attorney reached out to you, and I believe it was on a Saturday. Meanwhile, I think work proceeded again on Sunday. But I'd like to give you the opportunity to give us your side of the story before we talk about remedial actions that will be required of this council.
Joe Murphy with Big Sky Civil and Environmental here. I will start things off. So I have been involved with the planning and the design of this project since the very beginning, and we understood from the city commission meeting, city council meeting, how important those trees were to preserve. And we developed what we thought was a robust tree preservation plan and included it in our documents, drawings to delineate the area where the trees needed to be protected, and the fencing was placed in that fashion. Of course, the first thing the contractor did was brought the site to grade so that they could break ground on the building. And in early November 6th, in fact, I had to make a trip to Flathead for unrelated reasons, and chose to swing by the site, and I got a call from the site work contractor who was working on the site, and they indicated to me that they were concerned that there were trees that were going to be damaged by their excavating activities when they got to the point where they were going to be excavating for the retaining walls along the west side of the property. I took it upon myself to go meet with them that day and spent some time looking at the trees. There were 2 trees that were in what I would call reasonably close proximity to the west retaining wall. And at the time, the message that I delivered to the site work contractor was our commitment to the city to preserve these trees at all costs, and we need to do whatever is necessary to preserve these trees. You need to work around them, do your best job to get the retaining wall built as it's intended, and work around the trees. The result of that session is that there was a construction meeting. I believe it was the following Monday or Tuesday. It was, but still in early November. And we had this discussion, we furthered this discussion, and by the time we had this meeting, there was talk of maybe up to 3 trees or thereabouts that may become damaged through the construction. During the same construction meeting, and if I were to do it all over again, I wouldn't have done this, but we shared with the contractors
that were present, the general contractor and the subcontractor, what the city's condition was about if the tree becomes damaged and cannot be saved, that the trees will need to be replaced with large caliber trees. And it's I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that was the message that was shared with contractors at that time. And to the best of my knowledge, the plan was still to preserve the trees, do their best to work around them, and not take any of the trees down. That was a pretty consistent message that came from both us and the owner. Until I received a phone call from Angie Jacobs on 9 days ago on Saturday. That was when the project was moving forward. Nobody on the owner's end of the project or on the engineering design team was aware of the mass tree removal that took place out there. And I don't even know when it began and when it ended. And this vehicle, I still don't know exactly how many trees were taken down. I've heard anywhere from 8 trees up to 12 trees. I think the city maybe came up with a number of either 8 or 9, and the 3 remaining trees that are out there that are in harm's way may need to come down as they are viewed to be in danger should there be any east winds that occur. As a result of the learning of this and the discussions we had with the city attorney, we agreed to participate in a call that occurred, I think it was last Wednesday, and talked through this with department heads, city staff, and at least one of the city council members was on that call. And all I can say is we greatly feel bad about what has occurred. There was never any on our part to go out and massively start tearing trees down. And it has upset us, it's upset the owner, and we are deeply regretful for what has occurred. The outcome of last Wednesday's meeting was to prepare a letter of kind of a and our proposal is. At this point, I would, I guess I would just refer to the letter that you guys, I believe, have all received. Our intent is to hold good on the removal of the 3 remaining trees and to replace not only the 11 trees that would have been removed or will have been removed, and to make it even number of species, we proposed 4 trees of each species that were recommended by the city, 1 being a ponderosa, 1 being Douglas fir, 1 being Engelmann spruce, for 4 of those. The other suggestion that came out of the discussions was for us to reach out to Karis Nursery. We have contacted them. We've spoken with them a couple of times, and they expressed some reservation about being able to provide us with 20-foot tall trees. The city has also recommended getting in touch with Four Seasons Nursery. I've left left 1 message. I tried calling them again today. I believe their nursery is closed for the season, but our intent is to continue to look around and find the up to 20-foot trees if we can find those in the valley or in Missoula, and trying to get on that on behalf of the city. So with that, I guess I will turn it over to Dan Sampson if he has anything to add, or open it up for discussion, questions, and any further information you want to provide.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Good deal. Stan Sampson with Town Pump. I guess first and foremost is to mirror what Joe has said. I would like to apologize in earnest for the misunderstanding that took place out there. I can assure everybody on the call that we were just as shocked and surprised when we heard the number of trees. It was just a horrible, unfortunate misunderstanding, and I'm here to ensure the council and the community that we stand ready to right this wrong and do what we need to do. Get the mature trees replaced with more mature trees that are hopefully healthier and there for a longer period of time. Other than that, I don't have a lot to add to what Joe said, but again, my sincere apologies for what has taken place out there.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to turn it over to either Dana or Dave. I was not able to participate in the call with Town Pump and Joe last Wednesday. I think, Frank, you did participate in the meeting. Do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I appreciate both of their not just apologies, but I think they are sincere and that this was a mistake. What is, and I expressed to them the frustration in the community and the disappointment the community really feels as a result of the miscommunication and knowing how important it was to this community and to our even approval of this this project at that particular site. And so I think they understand that, but I appreciate their willingness to step forward and step forward quickly to address the problem.
And I would just add, I think it's an unfortunate situation, and they're very quick to respond to our calls as soon as we knew about the issue. One thing that I think really shows that they're willing to work with the city is they are working with our Parks and Recreation Department, with our forester and arborist to get their recommendation on what to replace. The CUP doesn't specify that. It just says a similar tree. The fact that we can now help with, ideal location, the size of the trees, because large caliber is pretty big. But when you look at locally, what can you get? And then even in Missoula, that 18 to 20 foot is kind of the largest trees that they sell. And so we felt that the trees that came down were probably over 60 feet. So the highest would be 20 foot. The type of tree is important because it is based on what is native to our area and what will last the longest. And so that is also very important. So I would say that I appreciate the apology as well, other than just them immediately working with our Parks and Recreation Department. That is all I have to add to the story here.
Dave, anything to add on your end? I guess one question I have is, let's go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
No, go ahead, John.
No, my only comment, and I appreciate your comments tonight, Dan and Joe, and I give you the benefit of the doubt, but I don't think this was intentional on your behalves. And I realize that city code only requires, in the condition of approval, only required that any trees that were damaged or to become diseased for any reason at any point must be replaced with a large caliper tree on a 1-to-1 ratio. And I'm curious, and this would be something for you to consider, Dan and Joe, but even though that's our code and that was the condition that you were held to, would there be any appetite on behalf of Town Pump in good faith to replace the trees at a higher ratio of a 2-to-1? So instead of just replacing the 12 plus the additional 1 that you've recommended, that we get 24 trees at the site and that those be integrated into your overall landscaping plan. Because certainly the trees that were removed, which were 12 to 18 inch diameter breast height pine trees of varying species, as you mentioned, certainly won't be made up with 12 4 to 5 inch caliber trees.
You bet. And this is Dan Sampson. I apologize for the delay there. My phone is a little slow to react here, but I think we're definitely open to exceeding that number. I'd be a little leery right off the cuff to say a 2-to-1, just because I'm not sure we can achieve the appropriate spacing out there. But we are definitely open to looking at that as an option. You bet.
So, John, I would make a recommendation that, if you say, a 2-to-1, that our arborist and forester, to the extent that they feel the spacing is available, it goes to 2-to-1. What I don't want to have happen is that we're placing trees and trying to create a forest field again, and you aren't allowing those trees to mature to their largest size available. And so what we're seeing with the current trees left is, all the foliage is up top because they were part of a forest, and so they grow different, is at least my understanding, and maybe Maria can add to this. But 2-to-1, I think when you look along there where we're having them remove, if 2-to-1 fits, I think that's appropriate. But I just want to make sure we aren't running into a situation where we're requiring more than what reasonably fits based on our arborist's input, I guess. Maria, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you're accurate in that, Dana. I mean, you just want to make sure that you have the right spacing, and definitely our arborist and forester would be able to work with them on making sure that they're planted appropriately.
And we are
reason I asked
commit to that.
Thank you. And the reason I asked that is my phone rang off the hook all weekend, and it was a holiday weekend, and we had staff that were on vacation with approved leave, and the timing of this was just really poor. And I'm looking for a way that we can turn back to our citizens that were, some of whom were disgruntled with the initial approval. And we tried to address our rationale for why this project was approved through an editorial in the paper that Frank and I both co-wrote. How do we make amends with our community? And that's my reasoning for asking for you to consider additional landscaping and tree replacement at the site, is so that we can turn back to our citizens and demonstrate that it will move this project forward in a positive manner and not have it blight our community, so to speak, because these trees were removed.
John, could I just add to that for you? The old growth trees that were taken down, as far as the value that they provide to our community, you're correct in saying that a 1-to-1 ratio would not then replace the value that we had for reducing carbon emissions. There's so much more that a tree does than just the visual aesthetic appeal that they have, and so a 2-to-1 would be closer in reaching the value that those old growth trees did provide to our community.
Yes, and I'll defer to you and your department and the arborists and town pump to figure that out. Any additional comments on this item from the council? Dan and Joe, thanks for taking the time to meet with us tonight and for
John, I do have a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay. Michelle, were you able to get those photos that I sent so that I could access them?
Yes, I did. I'm unable to share, so I've given that over to Dana to ask if she could.
Yep. Rebecca, what photos do you want me to share on here? Just
so the first one would be, it's a cut down log with my hand on top of it.
Okay, let me see if I can do this correctly here. Okay, there it is. Okay, there you go. It's
okay.
shared.
Yep. So that's that was the one that the project manager was cutting down. He was the only person on site when I went by on Saturday. And so luckily Angie was able to get in touch with John, and then they decided to call the engineer. Otherwise, I think a lot of the other trees might have gone down after that. So that's big. And then it just seemed like it was being done kind of quietly. And I just am wondering why, when you knew you were not meeting your conditions, you didn't call the city to discuss it before the trees were gone. And that's for the applicants, like, I mean, the people that are going to do the replacement. But usually if you're not able to meet a condition, you would at least notify the city, wouldn't you? So,
I'll go ahead and try to answer that. To the best of our knowledge at the time, right up until we learned of the massive tree removal, we understood that the subcontractor was going to attempt to work around these trees without tearing them down. Had he contacted me on Thursday or Friday, I don't even know when he began cutting the trees down. Had he came to us with that request or the inquiry, then by all means we could have gotten hold of the appropriate people of the city and discussed it with them. But up until the point that I received that call on Saturday, I understood that the subcontractor was going to work around the trees and preserve them as they were outlined in our preservation plan.
but you had walked the property and you saw that the trees were at risk, but you didn't contact the city at that point to discuss it. Okay, I'd like to move to the next slide, Dana.
Okay. Let me try to, which one?
It shows the bank being cut away.
Okay.
Maybe it's like a video, I think.
It's a video. Okay, I can share that. That's not a problem. Okay. These ones are always tricky, so bear with me here. I do not share. I'm going too fast. Hang on.
I just appreciate you doing it, so I don't know how to do it from here.
Yeah, it's for some reason not sharing though. Hang on one sec.
So if it gets loaded,
Right,
okay.
I'll share my screen. Let's see here. Can you see that? Or is my computer? My computer might be freezing up a little bit.
All right, Riz, you want to
We're all aware of the situation and what happened out there. We're aware the trees were cut. We're aware they were larger trees. Unless there's comments from the council on the mitigation that's being proposed in the letter, I don't see where this is going to get us this evening looking at photos of the cut trees, Rebecca, unless you're taking us down a different,
Yeah,
I don't want to put
John, I asked this question on Monday and I have never gotten an answer from staff either. It's about the cutting away of the bank, or where the retaining wall is going, where all the roots of the trees were cut through as well. And it looked like someone had moved the fabric, the tree identification area that was supposed to be protected, but it looked like they were also cutting into the bank. And so there is water in the southwest corner that was standing water. And now I'm wondering, I know the concrete was poured in the correct place, but if the trees have been ruined on that west section, is the retaining wall going to be adequate? Because they hit sand, and that's what I'm just wondering about, is who determines this? If the trees weren't protected and they knew they were supposed to protect the trees, who determines whether or not that side of the road is stable?
the engineers of record that are designing the project that consist of probably civil as well as geotechnical expertise that's well outside of our wheelhouse.
just like the trees were okay. Well, this is why I've seen this happen on projects before, and you know, you hate to see it, but it is a common thing that happens with large projects, and then there's always an apology. And so I just would like our staff to be very, very clear that they will be inspecting this site from now on regularly so that nothing even more serious happens in terms of leakage of the tanks or anything that could harm our water supply. Because it's one thing to intentionally damage trees or unintentionally do it, which is part of development, but it's another thing to not have very careful oversight of toxic materials. So I really hope there will be better oversight from the people that are building this to make sure that the rest of it goes well, because it's very upsetting. Thank you.
I think we all agree with you, Rebecca. I just, for those that are watching, I want to be very clear that the activities that occurred out there are not affecting our water supply, and there aren't materials that are being placed that are going to contaminate our water supply or groundwater resources as they construct this project. I just don't want that rhetoric getting out there because it's just not founded in fact.
Okay, as long as it's inspected regularly and we don't have to worry about it. Thank you.
That's fine. Appreciate that. Further comments from the council, or should we move on?
Can I make just a couple quick comments?
Of course.
Both Dan and Joe appreciate the fact that I think you guys are sincere in your disappointment in what happened out there. Although we used to have a term for it on the Lakeshore Protection Committee, we called it the $500 view. And that was what people got when they cut down trees in the Lakeshore Protection Committee, in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, because the fine was $500. And I'm hoping that's not the case here. But for both of you guys, you were at our public hearings and you knew just how important those trees were. So ultimately, the responsibility falls back in your laps because you should have conveyed that a little better, obviously, to your contractor. Your contractor went ahead and cut those trees down. That's the bottom line. We can blame them all we want, and we can go through whatever postmortem, but at the end of the day, it's your property, it's your project, and you got people working for you, and they didn't do what they're supposed to do. So it's a huge problem, and like the mayor said, it's a big problem in the community. People didn't want you there to begin with. Now you're there. We thought we did everything we could to mitigate that impact, and I think we did a pretty good job, and I think we came to an agreement with you guys. You didn't live up to that end of the bargain. And I realize we don't really have any legal way to get back at you for that, and I feel bad about that, quite frankly, for the community. And I'm not sure how we do it, but I would really like to see us come up with a mitigation plan that lets everything move forward. And like the mayor said, whether that's a 2-to-1 replacement or whatever that is, and I would hope that we would do that with our arborists and the Parks Department. And if I had my way, I'd jerk your building permit until that plan was drafted and approved. But I don't think we have the ability to do that, and I wish we did, because that's what I would like to see us do. But hopefully you guys understand that, you know, the ball is back in your court, and you better play well with the ball and without it, or there might be some legal ramifications in the future. And I would do everything in my power to see that we make something happen.
I would like to rest. I'll tell you that from the very beginning, the very first time that I heard about this from the city attorney, we have maintained this is our issue to resolve. It isn't the subcontractor, it isn't the general contractor, because both Dan and I and the lead architect on the project were meeting with you guys. We're the ones who are aware of the conditions of approval. So believe me, we understand the buck stops here.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'm going to go ahead and move us along unless there's any other brief comments. Steve,
it's just a brief question. I'm sorry. It's just a brief question. I'm unclear on where we landed with what the direction is. Are we specifying a number of trees that need to be replaced, or are we saying that the maximum amount of trees to the extent possible, given the site limitations and that kind of stuff.
And
What's
the
the
input
direction?
from arborist, the latter.
Okay.
So a 2-to-1 with the 8 that they removed and the 3 that we're going to require removal due to hazardous conditions for the highway. That would be 22 trees, up to 22 trees unless otherwise prohibited due to site constraints by our arborist and forester. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And what I would add to that is, although local nurseries may not have the stock that we're looking for in terms of caliber of trees and trying to accommodate 20-foot heights, there's certainly nurseries out of state that have that stock in stock right now that don't shut down for the winter. So I think we can be creative and look outside of the valley and try to find a nursery that can provide the caliber trees that we're looking for here.
I think we also need to understand that we need to let the arborist decide when the best time to plant those trees is. I don't think they can plant them in the middle of winter and keep them viable. But I
agree, Steve. I don't think there's no rush to get the trees installed just to meet some hypothetical timeline. I think the plan would be most effectively integrated once the overall landscaping plan is being installed. I'll totally agree with you, defer to our arborist, but certainly not jump to getting trees just for the sake of getting trees put in the ground this winter. If we need to wait till the spring when the ground conditions are more appropriate and we can maximize the caliber of the trees at that time, that's what we should be doing. With that said,
one more thing. I just wanted to thank Dana for recognizing that this is not the first time this has happened in our town. And so she's come up with an idea to possibly fund a half-time position for an arborist to sit in on site planning and make sure that even on private projects, once heritage trees or favorite trees, mature trees are identified on a project, that there might be a way to save them in the future. So I really appreciate that there might be an improvement so we don't have to. This is the second time I've gone through this exact same scenario, and we've had it other times too. So it is a risk with development, and I appreciate Dana coming up with a solution so that this community doesn't have to worry about this type of thing in the future.
thanks, Rebecca. On that note, we're going to move forward on our agenda. It's been a long evening. We have a standing agenda item related to COVID-19. Are there any comments? We've already discussed during item 10A of the agenda when Dana presented her manager's report. If there's anything new to present, now would be your opportunity. Otherwise, we'll move on to our discussion on recycling that stemmed from our work session.
So I think I just need clarification if we're going to hold the second meeting in December, whether it's a special meeting or December 21st, to adopt a resolution that would support the public health guidance currently in place or and the task force messaging. We can easily get that resolution drafted for a meeting next week if needed to expedite that process so it's not the week of Christmas. And other than that, the task force does not recommend any additional restrictions above what the governor has. So staff is not proposing any type of ordinance at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I would, given our discussions earlier, I would make a motion that we hold a special meeting as early next week as is practical to consider a resolution supporting the task force's actions and activities to date and be as far ahead of the holidays as we can. Waiting till the 21st, I think, will be too late for us to be effective at all. And so it might hope that we would be able to hold a special meeting on Monday and not have the need for a regular scheduled meeting on the 21st.
I agree, Frank. Are folks available, and do they agree with that recommendation for the 14th, which would be next Monday?
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay. I'll take that as an actual motion. That was seconded by Councillor Hennon. Roll call, please, Michelle. This will be for a special meeting of the City Council to consider a resolution on Monday, December 14th.
John, can we just clarify, would that start at 5:30 or 7:10?
Let's do earlier so people can get home to their families. So let's do 5:30.
Perfect.
Councillor Cornell,
Aye.
Councillor Sweet,
In favor.
Councillor Davis,
In favor.
Councillor Hennon,
Aye.
Councillor Fury,
In favor.
Councillor Norton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And we do have a standing item from our work session that we should probably discuss. I think Craig's still waiting on direction regarding the recycling RFQ or RFP, which it was an RFP. And I think we kind of came to consensus on doing a bid alternate that would include procuring a cost estimate or proposal for curbside recycling, as well as an alternate to segregate out what the recycling costs for number 1 and number 2 plastics are under both scenarios, if I'm not mistaken, Dana and Craig.
Yeah, I think that's what I got out of the work session. I will plan to prepare a staff report with an updated RFP, and I'll shoot for the first meeting in January, but it might wind up being the second meeting. But yeah, I'll come back to you guys with an updated RFP, and we'll look to establish a committee to select that contractor.
Okay.
And just for a heads up for the council, we are looking at hopefully having the garbage contract on the first meeting in January. But part of that contract is that they continue to service that site through at least March, which is our current contract. And they, I think they would be open to, an amendment to continue servicing it as needed through a later date. But I think that'll incur a cost. So we haven't gotten there yet. But we do know that central site will be serviced through March. I have to touch base with the housing authority to see when they plan to break ground, but I'm assuming they're going to still be a few months out after that even. So we may go a period of time without a central recycling site, I guess is what I want to warn the council about.
Okay. I do think there were a lot of good comments that we received from the public tonight regarding the work session, and I think a lot of the comments fall under the category which is included in the requested services of the RFQ regarding site design. So some good comments tonight that I hope staff will consider with the selected consultant as we move this forward. With that said, we'll move on to Councilor Mayor comments, and we'll go ahead and start with Frank this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have any further comments this evening. I think I wish everybody a pleasant holiday season where they are able to stay socially safe and masked, and hopefully we'll bring this thing to a little bit of a close. But thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Andy?
No comment. I'll see everybody a week from today. Thank you.
And Rebecca?
Just wanted to thank the staff for working so hard on our behalf this year. It's been just a hard year, but they keep us on track. And John, you too, you're just so efficient at everything. And just wish everybody some peace for the holidays. And we are getting through it, We just didn't know where we'd be when we started, but we're doing well. So if everybody can just stay on track with all the safety precautions and stay calm and grateful, I think we're going to get through it even better next year.
Thanks very much, Rebecca. And Ryan.
No comment from me.
Thanks, Ryan. Steve.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple things. One, really appreciated this year on being on council. It's been quite a year to be an elected official. I wasn't quite planning on this when I got started. So I do appreciate all the viewpoints and perspectives of everybody, and certainly all the hard work that the staff does on our behalf. So thank you. I also wanted to just remind everybody that today is Pearl Harbor Day, which is a kind of an important day in our history. And if you've ever been out to the USS Arizona, it's a pretty humbling and interesting experience. So that is all.
Thank you, Steve. And finally, Ben.
Yeah, the only comment I had this evening was regards to the letter and also public comment that came from Jenny at the Big Mountain Commercial Association regarding the proposed bus stop. I'm sure there's a lot of thought that would need to be put into something like that. I would just make the comment that in my opinion, it might be something worth taking a look at.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And Craig, she's been in touch with you regarding that project?
Yeah, she has. It turns out, I guess the snow bus has really been struggling for the last 10 years or so since we began making improvements to Central Avenue, and they've been contemplating getting the snow bus off Central Avenue for a while, but now they're getting serious about it, and so in order to do that, they need to create some stops on Spokane Avenue. I think there's more to it than just a few parking spaces, as Jenny, alluded to in the letter. I think the state is going to require that they do some infrastructure improvements, and so it won't happen this year. This will likely be something that we can work through over the next couple months, and then they would hire a contractor to do some work in the spring or summer, so it would affect the route next year in the 2021-2022 winter season. So anyway, we got to spend some time with it, but it's at their request that we start working on that.
Okay. Thanks, Craig. I don't have much, anything at all. Just want to thank everyone for all that you do. It's been a pretty challenging year, especially I imagine for the incoming counselors, but certainly proud to have you guys aboard with us tonight. For those that are looking into the winter season and our typical festivities, which include Winter Carnival, Dana and I have engaged with Joe Akey and the Winter Carnival Board regarding the activities, the Merrymaker, et cetera, and how those are going to be handled this year. And I'm glad to see that the board's literally virtually going virtual with all of the activities. And Dana and I will be meeting with Joe and the board probably next Monday, although we just scheduled our special session, so it'll have to be probably the Monday after the first of the year. But we'll circle back with the council as well as the public on how the Winter Carnival is going to shake out this year, because it's certainly going to be much different than we've experienced in past years. But nonetheless, I think it's an event that hopefully we can bring some sort of normality back to our community through celebrating our winter heritage here in Whitefish, even though it's going to be a bit different. So hang tight, and hopefully the Winter Carnival Board and Dana and I will have more updates here in the next month or so. With that said, Dana, do you have anything further tonight? We are adjourned. Thanks very much, everyone. Be safe.